first speaker, Marko. He's a front-end engineer. He's a lecturer, data visualization scientist, leading front-end team at AVA. He's also working as a tech speaker at Mozilla, promoting values of the open web. Today, in his talk, he will teach us how to create our own SVG maps that are lightweight, easy to use, and very customizable. So, hello, Marko.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Very good, very good.
Time for you to join. So please, everybody say hello to Marko on the chat, and I will just hide myself.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very grateful to be here today. Special thanks to all of my friends from SVG that organized this and invited me. Hope you won't mind. I'm not looking at the webcam. I'm looking at the big monitor here. Maybe some of you remember me from last year's SVG conference, where I talked a little bit about maps, but more about making them performant with visualizing large data sets using DeckGL. Today we're going to go to the opposite way. So we're not going to go into that big data sphere and complex visualizations. We're going to go lightweight. And I hope you'll like what I have to show you. I will just start my screen share. Okay. Hopefully you see this. And we can start. You see my screen? Just someone say yes, and everything's fine. Okay, cool. Great. It's I talked at so many different conferences throughout the years, and this is actually my first online meetup. So it's a little bit strange for me also to not be able to see the audience. And you guys have the chat, but when I have my full screen mode here, I don't see the chat. So I will have to probably minimize it from time to time just to see your reactions. As Jakub said, we're going to talk a little bit about interactive maps and what we can do with them. I said in 30 lines of code. We'll try to make it lightweight as possible. And I will show you some interesting techniques how you can do this. Basically, I got this idea when I read a couple of blog posts on the web, and especially one from my friends from the Smashing magazine, where they had actually a great article on what you can do with maps and how you can create your own maps. So I had tested this, tried it out, played it around. I said, well, this might be interesting for people to hear and see, because it's fun to know. And you can even benefit out of it somehow in your projects, hopefully. So I also hope that all of you are safe and healthy in these difficult times, and that everything will go back to normal as soon as possible. And, this is just one way for us to gather and talk and discuss. And I really love that SVG organized this. So we can actually be at our homes and do this. So let's start. So a couple of things about me. I'm a developer advocate and front-end lead at Ava. Jakub read AVA. It's Ava, but it doesn't matter. So what we do at Ava is we actually monitor safety risks everywhere throughout the globe, and visualize them and create a specific web dashboard where all these incidents are displayed, and we notify our clients accordingly based on their preferences and safety threats they are interested in. So you can assume that in these past few months, it's been a lot of work for us, really a lot of work, because we were actually preparing ourselves in all these years before for something like this, I think, and we didn't even expect it. It was very challenging and interesting. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about what we actually do here later. I also do speak a lot at conferences, and you might have seen me last year at SVG. I work as a tech speaker for Mozilla. I actually talk a lot about, open source things you can do on the web, and interesting and fun things you can do with the web. They're mostly revolving around data visualization and like interesting things you can show and display in the browser. And yeah, so I'm also an organizer at Armada.js. This is the largest JavaScript conference in Serbia. Last year we had more than 500 attendees. We were hoping for a bigger event this year, but who knows, what would happen. We plan 1st and 2nd of October this year, but we will see how this all plays out. And organizing meetups like this is also a good and cool idea, I think. So if you ever want to visit Serbia and you don't have a good reason, so make JavaScript your reason and come visit us. I'm absolutely positive you'll have fun and you'll learn something new. I'm also working on my PhD in data visualization. The working part is I kind of like to do more fun stuff than serious stuff. And when I say serious stuff, like writing boring papers. But this all comes with the job, and I try to balance it. Yeah, so these things are, I think, pretty logical. JavaScript, CSS. Someone said, if you don't love HTML and CSS, you should reconsider your career in web development. I don't actually agree with that a lot, but it's always good to have your enthusiasm placed with these things too. You can follow me up on Twitter. This is my handle. You can always reach out to me. My DMs are open there. So, we can chat about different things if you have some similar interests. Okay, so let's start. So why are we talking today about maps, or why would we talk about maps at all? Well, they represent the real world on a much smaller scale. And that is pretty obvious, right? And especially today when the world is so connected with so many different services, data, different applications in different domains, it's very valuable to see where you are or where your interests lie in the world. If you're looking for, a new place to move in, or Airbnb, booking.com, or you just want to travel from one place to another, or just want to see, prices on some certain criteria in different parts of the world. So they actually help you virtually travel from one location to another. And this is really, really cool. And, they help you also to figure out where you are and where you want to go. Especially when we're thinking about what is around us. And this is very, very important, especially today. And when we're talking about, data, and we are getting more and more data from different sources. And you've seen in the past few months, many different maps, I can say, that visualize different things that are happening around the world as a consequence of this virus that hit us. And people were relying heavily on maps and also on different types of visualization, such as charts and things like that. But it was very important for people to know what is happening in their surroundings. And, maps are beautiful. If you don't share my opinion there, maybe I will be able to convince you otherwise later. So feel free to write in the chat if you don't see something properly. You can always maximize and double click. So hopefully everything will work. So let's see what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, I'm going to make a short introduction into tools and frameworks that are available today that are people mostly using. Some of them I included in the poll that you can actually vote on. I would really appreciate if you would vote on that. Try to be sincere, and I'm interested in your feedback on what you use and how and things like that. We're gonna, of course, demonstrate a couple of examples of how these frameworks are used today, and of course where you can find them and how you can use them. We're gonna see how we're gonna get the data to be able to generate this lightweight maps. And of course, we're going to see what we can do with the data, actually. So the format of the data is quite specific. If you never played around with this, I can assume that you don't know the format. So it might be cool for you to know what you can actually get from the data. And of course, we're going to go into the creation of the maps. Pretty straightforward process, I think. And at the end, we're going to see how we can use them. So yeah, so a couple of things about tools and frameworks. Google Maps. I don't believe there's anyone here who hasn't heard about Google Maps and what you can do with it. An awesome tool. I use it, daily. Don't use it so much at a professional level, but I use it like, as a user. I use a couple of different things for my professional development. But they're an awesome tool. So many resources there. You can find very, very, very wide range of options that you can use today, especially when we're talking about very precise navigation, routing, also, like traffic conditions and things like this, and etc. One of the frameworks and tools that I really love is Mattebox. This is something I actually do use professionally and very, very extensively. I would say Mattebox is currently the only real competitor to Google Maps when compared to variety of options that they offer out of the box, and different kind of things. So like if you're a mobile developer, there's something for you. If you're working in augmented reality, if you're working in gaming industry, if you're working in web development, even car industry, there's really, really a lot of options that you can use here. And maybe even if you are a designer, Mattebox has a tool called Mattebox Studio where you can create like amazingly beautiful maps, and like you can just reach your creativity there. So I saw a lot of interesting maps throughout the years, like pirate maps and things like this that are actually based on real geographic locations. And there are, of course, other tools like, Bing Maps, Argus by Esri, OpenStreetMap. I can assume that you've, touched some of these things in the past and use them in a certain way. I'm just gonna lower the presentation just to make sure everything's working properly in the comments. Yes, no one complained. Everything's fine still. Yes. Okay. No one's gonna write yes. I'm still connected. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So as I said, maps are beautiful, and I just wanted, before we get into all the technical things and technical details, to show you a couple of examples of maps on the web. Probably you haven't seen these. If you did, I know even better, then that means you're really interested into maps. So yeah, you can see this one. This is not a PlayStation game. This is actually a map that works in the browser. It's built for the game Ghost Recon Wildlands. And you can actually see how this works in the browser. There's a link here. You can actually go to this link. The presentations will be, this presentation will be added to my slide deck, slide deck, right, on LinkedIn, or slide share. I confuse those two things. On LinkedIn slide software. So you'll be able to actually open this, all of the links, and see them. So like you see that this is very, very interesting. We're not going to build this kind of a map today. I'm really sorry. It would take, I think, more than 30 minutes, but I think you understand that. This is something else, something a little bit different. Last year at SVG, I kind of explained how you can build a map like this. We're actually seeing here yellow cab versus green cab trips in Manhattan. So this is like almost 10,000 trips that are happening in 30 minutes in Manhattan. So it's a lot. And like you want to visualize this, and like you want specific way coloring so people can interact with this, get a sense of the data and things like this. So if you want to learn more on how to build these kinds of maps, there is a video from my last year's talk, and you can actually get a sense of what you can do with a tool called DeckGL, which relies heavily on Mattebox, but you can also use it with Google Maps. Here's another example. This is also a game in the browser. I'm showing everything that I'm showing here is running in the browser, so it's not some video that I'm posting of just someone built this, or it's a PlayStation game or something like that. So everything works in the browser. So this is something called Welcome to Fillory. I think it's connected with a TV show and you can actually explore and play something and play around with that. So how to choose which one of these you want, which kind of map you want to build. Do you want to use Google Maps, Mattbox, OpenStreetMap, or do you want to build a customizable solution like one of those we've seen just now? Well, that kind of depends. And I think it kind of depends on what type of business are you running, or what is the business of the project that you're currently in. So if you're working in transport logistics, it's very important to have the current state of the traffic. I think it's very important to know all of the. It's very important to have a precise location, so like addresses, POIs, and things like this. And I think that very much affects on what you want to choose from. Or so let's say you're running a logistics company, you probably go with Google Maps or Mattbox. If you want to do some precise location filtering based on some addresses, or you want to find something that's close to a McDonald's or something like that, I would say then maybe Google Maps will be a thing for you, because it has a lot of POIs and you can actually search all of these businesses that are in the area and things like this. If you maybe want to go with building games or some specific mobile experiences, Mattbox might be better for you. If you're actually just want to display one map that's not going to be searchable, zoomable, but maybe just specific things that are visualized on top of that map, we might go with a simpler and lightweight solution, such as an SVG map. And we will dive into this a little bit later. What is also important is what is the size of your business. So, when I say the size of your business, it kind of means, the amount of visitors and traffic your applications are getting. We're talking about web development here. So yeah, the thing is, Google Maps is very, very expensive, especially in the past, I think, year and a half. They increased their pricing, lowered the amount of free requests that you were able to get. So like I would say like roughly before you were able to get around 25,000 requests per week, and I think now is 28,000 per month for free in the free tier. So that's a drastic difference, and people then started changing the frameworks that they use, thinking about different alternatives for the maps. A lot of people switched to Mattbox, which is I think a lot cheaper and offers a lot of versatility there, similar to Google Maps. While some decided, well, we don't have to actually use this because we're visualizing specific scenarios. Like let's say you're a news outlet and you're just displaying what is happening currently in your country, crime rates, or like real estate prices, or something like this on maybe a higher scale, of country scale or region scale. So this is where this comes in. So like what part of the world is my project focused on? That also depends on which kind of map solution you would choose. And I think it's a very important factor. So like, let's say you want to visualize something that's happening on a country level. Let's say crime rates that are happening in your country. And so like this region has more crime, this one has less, and things like this. Or you just want to say you want to see the weather conditions in your country, things like this. It doesn't matter which is like the weather state in your street or the next street or the next block. It kind of just interesting to see what's happening in your city maybe, and that's it. So you might want to use something lightweight. It doesn't make sense for you to pay a lot of money for Google Maps if you're just a weather app for your country. You'll get a lot of visitors. Let's say it's the most important weather app in your country. You'll get a lot of visitors, a lot of requests will get served through Google Maps, and at the end you will be paying for something that the customers actually don't need, while you can do this on your own, free of charge, and it will work, it will be effective. So you can actually save some money. So I'm going to show you one example that I think will be highly effective to demonstrate what we actually want to do here today. So as you all know, these past few months have been really hectic for everyone in the world. And maps like these that visualize coronavirus have been very, very popular because people want to know what's happening in their surroundings. So what we see here is a coronavirus infection tracker for China, mainland China, built by Asian Review online web portal. What you can see here is the map of China with different regions bordered. You can see a legend, and it's colored differently based on the amounts or high number of infections that are happening. And you can actually filter by date, so you can change the coloring when you select different dates and things like this. So these types of solutions are very straightforward and simple to build, but I also think highly effective visually, because it actually does the job. We really want to see what's happening in these regions. This does very effectively. We're able to filter really fast. It even has, on hover, some actions, and that's it. So I don't actually have to zoom in and see the infection rate in a certain street in a certain city in China. That doesn't make sense, and we don't even have that data. So using something like Google Maps or Mattebox for things like this might cost you a lot of money, and it might not even be that effective, I think. So yeah, this solution is an SVG map. So why SVG maps? They are lightweight. So if you never encountered, I would try to assume that everyone here knows what is an SVG. It's short for scalable vector graphics. If you never played around with SVGs, I added a reference at the end of this talk, so you can actually click it and go to that and introduce yourself with SVGs. So I would just say, if you never encountered SVGs, I will try to simplify it as much as possible. So imagine it's a picture, an image, that you can actually manipulate with JavaScript and CSS. So you can actually take parts of this picture, of this image, and do something with these parts. Of course, this is overly simplified, but just to help you out if you never played around with it. You will see later how this works, how this looks also. As I said, highly customizable. It has an option to be styled with and accessed by JavaScript and CSS, and free to use. Yeah, of course, why not? We're gonna see here how we can build our own SVG map from the beginning. But sometimes you don't even actually have to do that. There are a lot of free SVG maps on the web that you can just take. So there are SVG maps I think from almost any country in the world, just one country, take that SVG, and that is that country, even with regions. But sometimes you might encounter a case where you won't be able to find the SVG map that you want, or it might happen that that map has a certain license that kind of doesn't allow you to use it in a way you would like to. So we're going to go through the process of generating your own SVG maps from the beginning. But everything, later parts of this talk, can be applied to any SVG map that you just download from the web. Yeah, as I said, really, really straightforward and easy to style. So let's start. So what we first need to do is get the data. So we're going to get the data. There's a lot of resources on the web to get geographic data for many different cases and scenarios. We're gonna talk today a little bit about countries and country borders, or like world views. So we're going to use something called Natural Earth Data. So Natural Earth Data is a portal that you can use to get basically all of the country and region border style levels of the maps for free. It's open source. So you can actually download the shape files, that's how they're called, and you're going to get all of the data for a certain region that you're interested in. So you can feel free to visit this website and see what it offers. So it's very, very cool. If we're talking to use this, if we're talking about visualizing something at a country or a province level. If we're talking about going to street views and things like this, and we're not talking about SVG maps in this form as we are today. So it's not enough resolution to show neighborhoods or street levels or things like this. So this is how the website looks. So you can see here that you can actually download the data. There are actually choices that you can make on which types of shape files you want to download. And when you download the zip file, it would look like something like this on the right. So there's a lot of files there. Basically, everything is called kind of a shape file, although only one has this SVG extension. Everything is here together. So it only has 200 kilobytes. So 200 kilobytes for all of the borders of all of the countries in the world. Okay, so what's also interesting to note here is when people are talking about borders, there are a lot of different views from different nations, of course, of how the borders are represented. And Natural Earth is built with collaborators and a lot of volunteers, and it's built by North American Cartographic Information Society. So it's kind of up, I think, their decision of how they actually want to display borders of certain countries. Usually you won't have these problems. It will be displayed like any regular map. But it might happen that you want to actually display a little bit different borders, or maybe even create your own maps, and you are able to do this, and we will show how, or like with which tools. So when you download these shape files, for you, they actually don't mean anything. You have no idea what is there, how I can see this, how I can use this. So we want to first view the data. There are a lot of tools that enable this. One of the better ones, or I think it's the best one, it's called QGIS. So it's an geographic information system software that allows you to open and load this shape file. And you can actually see what's happening there. You can visualize it. You can manipulate the data that is available there. You can add new things. You can actually separate things. So let's say if you want to, you have to be aware also that when we're talking about countries, not all countries are all territories of a single country are bordered. So you can actually have one country having a territory in one part of the world, and same country has territory in a whole another part of the world, and you might want to visualize this differently. So you might actually want to split the data somehow. So you are able to do this with QGIS. So I'm going to show you a short video of how you can actually load our shape file. So this is how the QGIS looks. We just select add layer, and we're adding vector layers. Those are our shape files. And we can select our data set here. This is actually what we've downloaded. So we're going to go into the folder where we downloaded it and load the SHP file. And it's here, and we say add, and we can close this, and we can see the map of the world. So this is actually what you downloaded from Natural Earth. You can change the styles, coloring here. But what is more interesting here is if you right-click on the layer, we can get the attribute table. And here we can see all of the countries with their country codes, names, what is the type of the country, what is the ISO code of the country, etc. So I'm gonna show you a little bit more here of how this tool actually looks. So you see here the QGIS tool and the world map. So there are a lot of options. This tool is incredibly complex, and we're not going to use it for anything here. So don't be scared. I just want to show you that this tool exists, and you can use it, and you can play around with the data using this tool. But for the purposes of this talk today, it won't be relevant for you to know your way around this tool. So if we right-click and open attribute table, we can actually see all of the countries that are in the shapefile. And there are, of course, a lot of them. And we can see some properties that we have here. So what is the name of the country? What is the code? What is the type of the country? Is it a sovereign country? Is it a dependency? So we can actually see here a lot of different parameters. You would say that some of these things look really, similar or the same, but there are differences. So like there's a name, there is formal name. So like Panama, and formal name is Republic of Panama. So this might be also very important when you visualize something. And yeah. So there is a lot of things here that you can actually see, but you can also always right-click here, let's say to Panama, and say pan to feature, or maybe zoom to feature better. So here we are at Panama. So this is the data we got from the shapefile. So we can actually edit this file and add new columns and add new data, whatever data that may be. That might be a certain number. Let's say you want to visualize economy stats of countries in the world, or just countries in a certain region. You can use this tool to actually remove unneeded countries, or just visualize one country with the regions within it. So yeah, there's a lot of versatility here. I'm talking a lot here. Time flies. Okay, I'll speed up. So we want to create our SVG map. We're going to use a tool called Charactergraph Python. It's a lightweight Python library that actually enables us to generate the SVGs from our shape files. So it's built by Gregor Eich. He is, I think he was at the time, I'm not sure if he is still, a New York Times graphic editor. And it uses a simple JSON configuration file. And what it does, when you actually say Charactergraph, you have to name the input file name, which is the JSON config file that you created. And you just have to say the output file name. We won't go into details on how to install this. You can actually check it out on the link here. I won't call the Charactergraph because it has a lot of dependencies, and I usually run it in a virtual machine. But you can freely install it on your machine. I just do it for some specific purposes. I have a lot of different virtual machines. So yeah, let's show a couple of examples of how this actually works. Okay, so if we open our Visual Studio Code, we can see a simple example of the JSON configuration that's being used for Charactergraph. What we actually say here is we use this shapefile as a source, and that's it basically. Charactergraph, please use this shapefile as a source and generate me an SVG map. So what it does, it generates an SVG that looks like this. So I'm using an extension called SVG that you can integrate in your Visual Studio Code. I kind of zoomed in the Visual Studio Code so you can see what I'm doing here. Hope you don't mind. So this is why I get these weird colorings. But what you can see here is actually only coordinates of the countries. And this won't help you a lot. So we can actually go here, right click and say preview SVG. And we see the world. And we see the world, all the borders are here, all the countries are here. That's really cool. But the projection is very curved because there are different projections of the maps, of maps. And if you're interested in that, there's a lot of resources there. But this one uses a projection called Robinson projection. And we're kind of used to using something called Mercator projection. We're just gonna have to say we're not really satisfied with that. We might want to use Mercator projection. What we also want to do is we actually want to use the data from our shapefile that kind of tells us which countries are here. So we can see paths here. We can see these are the borders, but we have no idea in this SVG that these are borders of, what, Poland, the United States, Serbia. We have no idea. So we would like to use this. So this is why we're going to go with a little more complex configuration. But when I say complex, 14 lines, 16 lines, let's say. So we do very much the same we did last time. We say the shapefile, but we add a couple of different things. So what we do here is we say we want to filter the data. We don't want to show Antarctica. There's a good example here I found on the web of how this filtering is done. And I thought, like, well, excluding Antarctica might make sense because it takes a large portion of the map and it's not really usable. But if you don't want to do that, you can just remove this part. And we want to have two attributes in our SVGs. We want to have the ID and we want to have a name. ID will be the ISO of the country. So it will be a standardized short name of the country, and the name, well, it will be just the name. This parameter tells us to simplify the polygons that are the borders itself. We can have this or we don't. What it does actually is something like this. So LineSimplification. You can see as I'm dragging, the polygons here are getting less and less and less and less points. So they're getting kind of rounded up. It still looks similar. It's still the same shape. It's called Wisswolnigam's algorithm. Don't make me repeat that again. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce that. There are different algorithms for line simplifications. This is one that Charactergraph uses. So this allows us to have SVGs with a lot less points or vertices in a border, which then for effect has an effect that we have smaller SVG files. So if this is important for you, you can use something like this. If not, you don't have to simplify your polygon. And we say here we want to use the Mercator projection, which makes the map flat. There are other projections that do this, but Mercator is the most common one. So let's see how this SVG looks. So you can see here that it looks similar to the previous one, but now we have the ID and the name. So we have Afghanistan here. We have United Arab Emirates. We have Argentina, Armenia. So with each SVG path that represents a border of a country, we have an ID and a name. So when we visualize this, remember we switched to Mercator projection. When we want to preview this SVG, this is how it will look. So it's flat. And if you remember, we excluded Antarctica, so no Antarctica. A lot better, right? Cool. So let's see how to include this in our project. So as SVG is just like an image, we can include it in our HTML. And this would be our map. So simple HTML, 10 lines of code, right? And our map. When we open this in the browser, this is what we get. we get our SVG map, but unfortunately, we cannot do anything with it. You might say, well, you didn't add any JavaScript, and you would be right. But the thing is, when you're referencing an SVG externally as a source to an image, you're not able to manipulate the paths and the attributes in that SVG. So this is why we're going to just copy everything that's in the SVG. So we're just going to copy this SVG and just add it to our HTML page. So I just copied it. All of this is just an SVG, nothing else. That is generated. You don't type these things. And it is in one line. I just split it here for you to see it better. So simple HTML. I added a couple of styles here. And at the end, I added a little bit of JavaScript. And that is it. So like 30 lines of code. So someone will say, this is not one line. It is one line. Trust me, try it, paste it. You don't do anything here. So as I said, why we added this SVG here is because we want to actually manipulate the data within the SVG. Let's see what we're actually doing here. So let's go back to the top. As you've seen in the SVG, I've added a couple of properties that represent the ID and the name of the country. So what I'm actually saying here is for each path, give me a light gray color for the country and say the stroke would be white. And when I hover over the country, make that country gray. But let's say I want to color one country differently, might be US, why not? So the country that has, or the path that has this ID US, color me in yellow. Cool. Let's see this. You can see all of our countries are now colored in like light gray color. Borders are colored in white. That was that stroke. And United States is colored in yellow. You will see why Serbia is red. And if you hover, it gets grayed out. So this is CSS, no JavaScript, zero JavaScript still, just simple CSS. Okay, cool. No hover effect here. I color it differently. Okay, and if we want to manipulate a little bit with JavaScript, I also added that example at the end. So what I do here, I get all the country elements or the child nodes. I iterate through them, and I do two things. One thing is, if you might want to have, when you click on a country, open something or whatever, I just added a simple on-click handler that you can actually call, and you will get the name of the country you clicked on. And while iterating, I just said, well, if this country is Serbia, color Serbia red. So this is why Serbia is colored here red. But if we click here, we're just going to call alert and say, you clicked on Russian Federation. You clicked on Egypt. You clicked on Poland. OK, and that is it. 30 lines of code, interactive maps with CSS and JavaScript. So we started a little bit later. So I think I get a little bit, just one more minute. So I hope you liked what you saw today. And all of these things were inspired by a guide to building SVG maps from natural Earth data article by Chris Udarian from the Smashing magazine. I can highly recommend you to read this blog post. It's quite similar to what I described today, but with a little bit more details on what you can do with tools like QGIS. If you're interested to learn more about SVGs, there's a cool article. If you're into maps, Mattebox blog, really, really excellent. A lot of interesting content there. Although it's like mostly product related, there's a lot of interesting things you can learn. If you're into data visualization, I can recommend a Medium publication by Nightingale, called Nightingale by Data Visualization Society. And I always like to recommend a book at the end of my talk. This book doesn't have anything to do with SVG maps, but it does have to do with maps. It's called The Phantom Atlas. The Greatest Myths, Lies, and Blunders on Maps by Edward Brooke Hitching. So what is described in this book are all of those maps that are actually false, and like people, how they lied about what is happening in different parts of the world. So there's an island there that has this and this, and like people throughout history always redraw that island, although no one actually seen it or visited it, and then like people go there and see, well, there's nothing here, and you'd be surprised that this actually happened in like 2000 something, because people were just redrawing a map from 400 years ago, and someone just draw it for fun, or there are different reasons. So this is an interesting stories, a lot of interesting stories about these situations. So I took a lot of time, so hopefully no one will mind. It was a pleasure. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach me out on Twitter, here in the chat room, direct messages, LinkedIn, whatever. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if we have time for questions, but someone, Jakub, will probably tell me. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Marko, for your presentation. I loved your presentation last year on the SVG, the wow effect of the DeckGL. This was my favorite. Marko, we do have time for, I think, 1 or 2 questions. So if someone wants to ask a question to Marko, you can do it right now. You can just simply type it in the chat, or just click the request to participate button, which is on the top right, I believe, to join us here live. So
feel free. You can ask whatever.
In Poland, we have a saying to grow up like mushrooms after the rain. I think that's with all of those coronavirus maps right now. Everybody's now really an expert of this.
Exactly. There's a lot of this happening right now.
Do you think those maps were created with a similar approach to yours, like custom SVG maps?
Some of them are, yeah. The most used one, probably all the news portals reference, is the Johns Hopkins University map. That map is not like that. This is a map similar to Mattebox. It's being deployed from Esri ArcGIS. So you can actually zoom and do things there. But I think they just got support from Esri for doing this, and Esri got a lot of, I think, positive feedback for doing this, also providing this service for the world. But they would be able to do similar effect, I think, with an SVG, and no need for this service, I think, in this case. But if you want to zoom in certain levels, I think it might be.
I think it's very enjoyable to work with maps because of the effect, because of the final effect.
Yeah, feel free to write questions in the comments if you want.
I can't see anything right now. I can see 2 people that were interested in the presentation the most, Artur and Konrad. They were saying that they also use some solutions to create maps. So
I saw how many trips are happening on Manhattan now. Well, you can ask, I think, Apple and Google. They have that tracking analytics, so you can actually see this probably very, very low. And yeah, I saw someone did the transition from Google Maps to Mattebox. I can fully understand that. Yeah, pricing just gets in the way. And for the polls, a lot of interesting votes also here that I can see. Some of them, well, yeah, some people used the maps for professional.
Yeah, there are over 30 votes per poll, so
yeah,
I think that's a good
it's
result.
kind of mixed. I like the answer, have you ever built your own SVG maps? That was no, very, very high no. And I really love that, and hopefully this will change that. Will it change that? Someone can maybe say yes. I will play around. Will someone play around with this? Just feel free to write it in the comment section. I'm really, really interested to hear that. No is also a good answer, I think.
Okay. Marko, I can't see any questions for you right now. So again, thank you for being with us here. Thank you for your presentation. And
okay, yeah, sure. We had one question. We had just one question. Is it possible to display also states counties for countries. Yes, this data is available, but for each country it's different. So it kind of depends on how low level you want to get. Because there are companies that actually, like Mattebox, they have a service called Mattebox Boundaries, where they actually did their best to map all different region boundaries in the world for different countries, and they actually pay. You have to pay premium for that. It doesn't come out of the box, but for some certain regions, you can actually get it there. Yeah.
Okay, Marko.
Thank you. It was a pleasure and interesting experience. A little bit like talking with myself, but okay.
I was always here, so you can just imagine that there are people. Hello, Juho. So Marko, thank you, and it's a great night here.